Craig.
I am Craig and you are William.
I am. And you're the Rome 2 Collector's Edition.
Hello.
This is episode 13 of Rally Point.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Rally Point, which is a very special episode because we've got more information than you can shake a at.
Put your away!
Welcome, adventurers.
Yes.
You have joined us, like the 13th Legion, in episode 13
of Rally Point.
We
have got so much information for you guys today, so let's just get on with it. Let's go.
Information is pouring from us. It's
yes.
like information. So, what have we got? What are we talking about? We've got the Collector's Edition, right?
Yes. We're going to show you guys a few of the things that are inside. We got an interview with the guy who made Total War Cards of Punic Wars, and he and I are going to throw down, and I'm clearly going to thrash him because he made the game and I drink a lot of coffee. I have the advantage.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so the way the game works is you have a set of cards which is they're your resources. They represent the resources that you have in any given year. And during the game you allocate your resources to capture certain land, which is kind of displayed in front of both players. Initially this is a kind of open process, so you play the cards open, so your opponent can see what you're going for. And the land cards that you're after have different regions, so you'll have Italy and Gaul and Africa and Iberia, Spain, Iberia. So you're playing to capture different land cards, which then go together to form sets. And initially, as I say, you play this stuff open, and as the game develops, you get special abilities such as playing cards face down. And playing cards face down obviously adds a bluff element or a kind of deceit element, so your opponent doesn't know what you're going for. Although you'll be collecting certain sets so they can kind of have a guess at it, but then if they think you're going for it and you know that they think that, then you can play with that and then make them spend more to stop you all of that stuff goes on. And you also have a wonderful tech tree, which is again linked in with all of this, which gives you the special abilities like playing cards face down. So you kind of have this balance in the game of developing your tech, which is over here, and playing your army cards against the land cards to win them, and then you build up your empire, I guess, of all the different regions, and you build up your technology, and if you get to the kind of pinnacle of a technology tree, then that gives you a multiplier for the score that you've got on your land. So you have this balance of trying to get to the top of a tech tree, which gives you this multiplier, and getting a good set of land cards which is connected with it, so it doubles your score, whilst also stopping your opponent from doing the same, and also playing your cards in such a way so that he doesn't know exactly what you're doing, so that he can't block you, or if he tries to block you, it's going to cost him a lot of cards to try and block you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was a pretty disgraceful and disgusting defeat.
You say defeat. I say could have possibly had a better, more beneficial outcome for the Roman nation. But we'll rise again.
I think maybe you're just shit.
He made the game wasn't fair.
Anyway, Collector's Edition.
Yes, also contained my favourite little piece of collectimabilia, and I made it in as fast a time as possible. It is a tiny Roman onager, which may allow me to reclaim my onager. So, including the Collector's Edition, is one special piece of equipment that I'm very, very happy to announce. It's a cardboard box, but it will be a tiny Roman onager to unleash tiny siege warfare on my tiny co-workers. They're not tiny, most of them are actually the same height or larger than me. So, I've never built one of these before, and my wonderful assistant, Pete...
I'm not his assistant.
will be timing me. So, are we going to go from pieces on the board? Are we going to do this like...
Do you want to open the box first?
Okay,
I don't want to time you opening the box. Maybe I should. It seems to be taking you quite some time.
Thank you, Sarcasmo. Okay, so... Ooh. It's all contained within a very business-like brown paper.
Surprise, it's whiskey.
Okay. There are many onagers like this, but this one is mine. Okay, before I put this together, I must remind everyone This is a desktop toy, not to be fired at people's faces, not to be fired at animals, specifically not to be fired at eyes. Just don't fire at living things. We'll just put that as a blanket.
You ready?
Ready?
3,
2,
1.
go. Okay, so. Oh! My God, I've done it! What's the clock?
7 minutes, 6 seconds.
Deuce! Beat that, internet. Today, Carthage burns. Holy crap! Carthage burns.
And that was firing an onager. Pete might have had a few minor organ problems from impact.
He'll live.
Yeah, the arms grow back all the
He's
time.
not
It's
dead.
fine.
He's not dead.
And that's what we take away from that.
Exactly. Now, from firing bits of dried cereal,
Yeah.
non-copyright infringing dried cereal,
Yes.
to firing masses of information.
Ah.
See what I did? This is Mr. Al Bickham, who's going to be talking us through the Rome 2 campaign map.
It's Rome 2 campaign information and my favourite feature!
See if you can guess which feature is Will's favourite. So, Rome 2.
Room 2.
Campaign map looks pretty effing epic.
Yeah,
How
I'd
big is
say.
it?
It's really big. It's colossal, in fact. It's not just big, it's colossal. So it stretches right from the kind of western most point of Spain right over to the province of Bactria, which is kind of modern-day Afghanistan, around that area. And then sort of right up from the British Isles, right down to North Africa, to Egypt, you know, just south of Alexandria. So, and you know, the Nile kind of feeds down from there, and you've got a little bit of landscape down from there. So it's just big everywhere, basically.
It's huge. It's like one of those massive wall maps here on the wall.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The ones you could put pins in the places you've conquered. Yeah.
But don't put pins in your monitor, because that'd be bad.
No, don't do that, kids.
There's a whole new system, isn't there, with provinces and regions and how they work.
Yep.
How does that all divide up? Because we've heard some numbers, we've heard like lots of provinces, lots of regions. How does it all tie together in the game?
So you've probably heard a bit about the province system and how that works. So you've got each province is made up of a number of regions, which you know, once you control all the regions within a province, you then own the province, and the province has a single administrational centre, like a capital city kind of thing. So the idea is we have, you know, back in the days of Shogun 2, every region on the map had a castle in it, basically, or you know, a settlement of some kind. So every kind of region conquering ended up in being a siege battle, and we want to bring more tactical variety, more battle types into Rome 2, and not just rely on siege battles like a series of headshots, you know. So you've got a ton of different kind of battle types that you'll go through in the process of capturing a province. And the great thing about capturing like every region in the province and kind of owning the whole province is you can then issue edicts over those provinces. And edicts are kind of province-wide buffs which can increase a number of different things. So, for example, you can host festivities, or endorse festivities within a province once you own that province, which gives them a kind of constant turn-by-turn happiness buff. So that's really kind of useful if your population happiness is low, for example. So, you know.
So it seems to be all about
it's really cool.
The local with the big scale. It's kind of like, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Being a good sort of local governor, being a good senator, and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's about local management, you know, benefiting your greater empire. So just like any total war game to some extent, you know, you've got to manage each region individually and you know, deal with its specific problems. So you've just got kind of more ways to do that in your armory now than we ever have before. So
And so there's politics and there's diplomacy. How do those two systems work, and how do they sort of interact?
So diplomacy works as you'd expect. You know that this is diplomacy is you dealing with factions external to your own. We've got a bunch of new diplomatic options as well, over and above any previous Total War game, and we're giving the player a lot more transparency over the AI's decision making when it comes to diplomacy now as well. So when you hit the diplomacy button and bring up the diplomacy panel, you'll be able to see like a list of actions that you as the player have performed by which the AI is judging you. So when it comes to its dealings with you, so it'll give you an overall kind of how happy or unhappy that faction is with you. So for example, if you've been kind of dicking about with that faction's allies and causing his friends problems, then he's not going to like that, So you'll get negative modifiers towards your diplomacy with that faction. Likewise, if you've taken direct action against them, there'll be problems with that. But even if you're not allied with that faction, if you've been nice to his allies or you've caused stuff that has, you've caused events to happen in the game which benefit that faction, then they're going to look more kindly upon you. So. But then you've got to figure factional AI personality into the mix as well. So some factions are more cautious, some are more aggressive and expansionist. So that can kind of tweak that kind of that sum of all the positive and negative actions that it's considering against you. That can tweak that somewhat. So. It's so diplomacy itself is I think we're offering the player more transparency than previous Total War games.
And the way that units are kind of recruited is slightly different in Rome 2, isn't it?
Yeah, so you no longer have this is really about reducing the kind of individual unit micromanagement, because the campaign map is so big, right? You can have a great number of armies kind of marching across that campaign map. Now it's going to become a great big, turn-to-turn, multi-click burden for you to constantly producing individual units and making sure they're marching towards their armies and managing their routes across the map and that kind of thing. So now we recruit straight to army, and obviously you could do that in Shogun 2. You could recruit straight to the army, but again, you'd see that individual unit march across the map. So the way recruitment works now is you select your army. If he's in friendly territory, you get the option to recruit your core army units. So for Rome, that'll be, depending on the kind of post or pre-Marian reforms, what kind of unit types they are. So you just think about your core Roman units that you like, Hastati or your Evocati or whatever. So you recruit those and they will appear, your army goes into muster mode, so they'll stand there and the troops will be produced directly in the army. So the army will grow turn by turn like that as you're recruiting. If you're not in friendly territory, you can still recruit because in every region of the world, even in friendly territory, you've got the ability to recruit mercenaries. Now, mercenaries are specific to the region, right? So if you're in Greece, you're campaigning in Greece with your 13th Legion or whatever, you won't have access to core Roman units, but you'll be able to hire on the spot kind of mercenary hoplite units or spearmen, the kind of your kind of classic Greek units. The downside of mercenaries is they're more expensive in upkeep terms than regular units, than your core army units, because they've got to be paid every year, right? So you hire them at some cost, and then that cost is repeated turn after turn. So mercenaries are really handy if you're about to go into battle, and you need to kind of balance the forces because the other army is bigger than yours or whatever. It's kind of handy to, as a short-term fix, to throw some mercenaries into your army and just buff up your army size a bit. So yeah, it's interesting. There's more options here, but there's less of that individual unit management. That's really about kind of the player making Caesar grade decisions, right? I mean, Caesar didn't give a monkeys about tiny little one man, 200 men marching from here to here. He's like, here's the 13th Legion, I'm dealing with the 13th Legion, and he's not dealing with the micro admin of a single unit within that army. He's thinking about the army as a whole, right? So that's the idea, is to give the player a kind of Legion thinking mentality, basically. So this is to kind of represent the idea in the real world that you know, every battalion has a legacy, right? The 51st Airborne have, you know, they have this kind of perfect kind of tactical doctrine for doing certain things, right? And that is taught even today, right? Even though nobody, obviously, from, you know, the formation of the 51st Airborne is in that army, is in that unit anymore. Those kind of tactical doctrines are still taught to the, you know, to new recruits today. So this is a kind of reflection of that idea of a legion gaining traditions over time, you know, and training its guys a certain way. So every army that you raise, you know, when you raise an army, you pick a general. He's the general of that army. You populate it with units. Your army goes off, does its army thing out in the world, beats stuff up, and as it does that, it gains experience. So as you're out in the field, as you win and lose and draw battles or whatever, you gain experience over time. The army gains experience. As it gains experience, it goes up ranks, and every army has 10 possible ranks it can gain. And every time you gain a rank, you can award it with a tradition. Now, tradition is effectively a kind of ongoing buff to the units in that army. And traditions, you know, there's a whole swathe of different traditions that benefit different fighting abilities of that unit. So, you know, there's traditions that benefit siegecraft, there's traditions that benefit, so one of the Roman ones, for example, Indomitable Legionaries, is a tradition which specifically benefits heavy infantry, which is obviously, you know, the kind of core of the Roman army is heavy infantry. So it, you know, it improves their kind of melee attack defense abilities. So, you know, as you go through these 10 ranks, you can award all these traditions, and each of those traditions also has 3 levels of 3 kind of upgrades. So you've got the basic level and 2 upgrade levels above that. So, you know, you might have only 2 or 3 traditions, but you might really kind of push the upgrades on those. So you've got, you know, 4 traditions, 3 of which are at level 3, and that's what that army is, right? So that, you know, and that in that way you can really kind of focus it to do one, you know, a couple of specific jobs really, really well. So you might have your perfect siege army out there, which you might want to move around the map to do all your city bashing for you, you know. Another really nice thing about the army system is that you can customize your armies. You can change their banner, you know, you can change their emblem, you can rename them as you wish, you know, Craig Skullcrackers or whatever, you know. So you know, go ahead and do that. But also the kind of key thing, one of the key things is this you don't want to lose that if the army gets crushed in the field, right? You don't want to lose that progression, right? Because you've put so much into that, and you're proud of that particular army there, and you're like, I like what those guys do. They do their job really well. Now, obviously, you know, individual unit veterancy, we still have that. So units get better as they fight. They gain in kind of rank themselves. So, but if the worst should happen, and the 13th Legion or, you know, Craig Skullcrackers happen to, you know, not crack enough skulls and they get wiped out in the field, you can go back to one of your friendly cities, and even though Craig Skullcrackers are dead, right, the concept of Craig Skullcrackers, it still exists. So you can raise the banner again. You can raise that banner again and build a new army under the Craig Skullcrackers Legion name, right? Now those traditions, all those traditions that you've worked so hard to gain, they'll be reinstated. So when you reinstate an army with you know, with all the traditions of I've tied myself into saying Craig's Skullcracker so many times now, it's sounding ridiculous.
No, it's still awesome.
Not that he didn't on the first go, yeah.
The Skullcrackers will rise again.
So the Skullcrackers will rise again, and they'll retain all those traditions. They'll retain all those all those bonuses and abilities that you gave them in the first place. Now, obviously, the unit veterancy will be lost. That's a bunch of new guys. But, you know, we come back to this idea that, you know, the battalion, the legion, the army, it outlives its individual members, and its traditions go on, you know, through time, kind of thing. So, you know, it trains its guys in a certain way because that's what it's famous for doing. So, you know, so yeah, it's really cool.
Cool. Great, I think that's...
So, thank you, and I'd like to thank Al Bickham, representative of the Legion of Craig Skullcrackers.
I'm the mess officer.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
that was Rally Point episode 13. Thank you to the maestro, Alexander Beckham, there for his excellent info dump. We're going to be back for episode 14 pretty soon. It's not going to be scary fast, but it's coming up pretty soon. So stay tuned. Check out our other videos on the playlist, and see you next time.